Good morning and welcome to the Kaballah of Purim. It's nice to have everyone around the table here this morning. We're going to do a 3-part series on this, being that Purim is the next holiday in a few weeks. So we'll spend the next 3 weeks on this most extraordinary holiday that unfortunately I must say is greatly misunderstood in the Jewish world. It is viewed, or at least many people see it this way, as a fun, children-oriented holiday where everyone dresses up in costumes and everyone's having a good time, and it's just a lot of fun, But oftentimes we fail to really delve into the meaning of this holiday. And when you look into the sources, to the Jewish literature on Purim, you uncover an unbelievable reservoir of information about Purim that puts this holiday above any other holidays of the year, even including Yom Kippur. It's the highest day of the year according to our Jewish sources. So how is it seen this? How is it that we don't observe it, or at least it's not in the conscious minds of most people, or many people, when observing Purim, if they're even observing it? And when I say that it's above Yom Kippur, I mean that, because the rabbis tell us this is a famous idea, that in the Torah, Yom Kippur is called Yom HaKippurim, or Yom Kippurim. Right? It's not called Yom Kippur in the Bible, it's called Yom Kippurim. And in Hebrew, the rabbis take these words and learn into it, and in the literal Hebrew, it's a day like Purim, Yom Kippurim, a day like Purim, which means that Purim is the paradigm, and Yom Kippur is like Purim. It's, Purim is up there, and Yom Kippur can be compared to Purim. So what is it about Purim? What is going on over here? So the story The story basically is in ancient Persia. There was a king, Achashverosh, and he got angry at his wife and killed her, had her killed, and he was looking for a new wife, and he made a beauty contest, and Esther, the Jewish girl, was chosen to be his new queen. Now, in his court there was a man by the name of Haman that was a very high-level official, and Haman hated the Jews because Mordechai would not treat him with the respect that he wanted, because he wouldn't bow to him, and he couldn't take the Jewish people. He wanted to kill them all. He plotted to kill everyone. He got Achashverosh on board, and he convinced the king to allow him to send out letters to the whole kingdom that all Jews, men, women, and children, should be annihilated on a certain day, the 13th day of the Hebrew month of Adar. And when Mordechai found out about it, he went to the palace to talk to Esther. You must go, you must do something, you must intervene. She does. After convincing, she gets involved. She makes a party for Achashverosh, and she invites Haman. And at that party, she tells Achashverosh he wants to kill me and my people. Achashverosh didn't know she was Jewish until that moment. And once that happened, he was enraged. You're going to kill my wife? And the whole thing turned around, and Haman and his 10 children were hung at the gallows, and the Jewish people had a great victory. They went to war against those that wanted to kill them, and they slaughtered many of them, and they saved themselves. And ever since, Esther and Mordechai had requested the great Sanhedrin, the great high court in Jerusalem, that they should incorporate the Megillah, the story of Esther, into the Bible, and to incorporate this as a Jewish holiday for eternity. And that's how it became. And in the Megillah, they both wrote what the things we should do on this day. 4 things. You should listen to the Megillah, read the story every year, give charity, give gifts of food to your friends and neighbors. And that's what we call today Mishloach Manot, the gifts of food that we give, presents, little packages of food. And then, of course, to have a great meal and to celebrate and should be a big celebration. That's the story. Now, you know that in the Megillah is the only book in the Bible that God's name is not mentioned. It's the only book in the whole Bible that there's no mention of God. And there's simple reasons for this. One reason I saw was that because Esther and Mordechai, when they wrote the story, they were afraid that when the Persians translate it, they will, if they keep mentioning God, they'll translate it into Persian because they want to include such a story into their history. So they'll translate it and write God, and they'll write their own idols. They'll turn it around. In the translation into Persian, they'll use the names of their own gods, which are of course idols, and Mordechai and Esther, of course, didn't want that. So they left the name of Hashem out of it. But of course, that's just a simple reason. There's, of course, layer upon layers of reasons why Hashem's name is not mentioned in the Bible, in this book. And we're going to discuss this in this series. That and many other things. But what I want to start today with is a halacha in the laws, in a law in the Code of Jewish Law regarding the mitzvah of Purim. So I mentioned to you the 4 things we do. You read the Megillah twice, once at night, once in the morning. You give, and during the daytime we give gifts of food to our friends, we give charity to the poor, and we have a great meal towards the end of the day, and that lasts into the night. That's the minhag. That's the way we do it. So the Shulchan Aruch says like this, and I'm going to read to you the words. It's actually a quote from the Talmud, but it's quoted in the Shulchan Aruch in the Code of Jewish Law as well. Chayiv inish l'psume b'Purim, a person has to, at this party, at this celebration, you have to make a Sudas Purim, a big feast, and that has to be done by day. During the daytime of Purim, at night it's not good. The night before, in other words, the night of is not, you don't fulfill your obligation. It has to be done by day. And the very next thing it says over here is Chayiv inish l'psume b'Purim. At this party, a person, at this feast, a person has to drink wine ad yoda, until he doesn't know the difference between Oror Haman Baruch Mordechai. Till he doesn't know the difference between cursed is Haman and blessed is Mordechai. In other words, what the Talmud is telling us here is that you have to get drunk to the point where you're so samished that you don't even know the difference between the evil Haman and the blessed Mordechai. So first of all, you have to be terribly drunk to get to that level. It's a very, very, you have to drink a lot in order to lose your whole understanding, the difference between Hitler and the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Lahavdul Elef Avdolos. You imagine such a concept. You don't know the difference between Haman and Mordechai. So 2 questions that come straight to mind. And this is a known question, it's a famous question. Perhaps we never discussed it over here in great detail, and I want to do that today. Why would the Torah tell someone to drink to that level? First of all, getting drunk altogether is not a nice thing. It's not a Jewish thing. It's not something you would... A mitzvah in the Torah to get so drunk. What kind of a mitzvah is that? Why would you tell people to get drunk altogether? But over here the question is a twofold question. You're telling a person, why are we celebrating Purim? What's the celebration of Purim? Because at one time in history, 2,500 years ago, or whenever it was, 2,400 years ago, there was a man by the name of Haman who wanted to kill us, and they plotted to kill us. And then thank God, there was a man by the name of Mordechai and Esther who saved the Jewish people. So we're celebrating that Haman went down and got hung and got killed, and Mordechai became the second in command to the king. The Jewish people rose to power then in Persia, and the whole thing was turned around for us. So how do you celebrate that? By losing conscious of the difference between Haman and Mordechai. So what are you celebrating? The whole celebration is that we won over Haman. That Haman was evil and Mordechai was good and Esther was good, and they overpowered them. That's the celebration. So you're telling me that in the celebration you have to reach a place where you don't know the difference anymore between Haman and Mordechai. So what then are you celebrating? What is the celebration? If you lose, your balance. You don't know what's going, between these two enemies, these two sides. What then are you celebrating on Purim? Someone stops you while you're drunk like that. You're doing the mitzvah. I don't know this. So what? Tell me, what are you doing here? What is the celebration over here? Oh, I don't know. There's Haman, there's Mordechai. I don't know who's right, who's wrong, who's good, who's bad. What kind of celebration is that? It goes. It's the opposite of the whole thing. Let alone the question of how does the Torah instruct a person to get drunk to begin with? What kind of a thing is that? But especially what's the sign that you're celebrating properly? Well, you don't know the difference anymore what happened that day. What kind of a celebration then is that? Should you ever lose, should a person ever lose his mind to the point where he doesn't know the difference between good and bad? So it's obvious that there's something over here that lies at the core of this mitzvah that needs to be understood. So the simple answer that you will find written about this is, what the Shulchan Aruch basically means is you should drink so much till you fall asleep. And when you're sleeping, you don't know the difference between him, everything is all the same. Okay, so that's a basic way of telling a person, get drunk to the point where you're so tired that you fall asleep in your drunkenness. Even that doesn't explain. So maybe the second question is taken away. That we're not really telling you that you shouldn't know the difference between good and evil. You should fall asleep, and in your sleep, you're in a different world. But why would you tell a person to get drunk like that? Even to fall asleep? Why should we tell people to get drunk and fall asleep? Tell people to be happy and dance, and be happy over this celebration. What kind of thing is it? So what's going on over here? So, I'll tell you the answer in short, and then we'll elaborate, as much as time permits. The simple answer is, there's two ways you can serve Hashem. There's two ways to serve God. First of all, how do we serve God?
With a complete heart.
The complete heart. But you also have to serve God with your hands and do the things He tells you to do. If a person says, I have my whole heart is devoted to God. So I love Hashem very, very much. My whole heart is full of love for Him. So then why aren't you putting on tefillin in the morning? It's not him, but that's the hands. My heart is devoted to Hashem. Obviously, that wouldn't be enough. You have to actually do what Hashem wants. Imagine someone told you, I love my wife, or I love my husband. So tell me, when was the last time you bought her a gift? Or you bought her flowers? What? Flowers, gifts. My heart. I love my whole heart is devoted to. I have to buy her a gift. What are you getting into my minutia? Obviously, a relationship that cannot last just on the heart. So when you say a full heart, you're 100% right, but it has to spill over to the rest of your body. But I want to go, there I spoke about how from the heart it has to spread to the hands and feet and to the rest of the body. But it doesn't start in the heart. It starts in the mind. It starts in the head. By a human being, it starts in the head. You have to serve God with your head as well. With your brain. Think about Hashem. Contemplate His greatness. To be devoted not only in your heart, but in your whole mind. There's two ways you can serve Hashem, as I said. There's the conscious level, and there's the subconscious level. I'll give you an example. You're trying to educate your children. A person educates his child. You should know, Sonny, that lying is a terrible thing. Lying is dishonest. And you explain to your child many reasons why lying is not good. It's not good because you're going to be caught and you lose trust with people. It's not good because you're not allowed to, you're not supposed to be dishonest. Even if no one catches you, you shouldn't be dishonest because then it compromises your honesty. You shouldn't lie because then they'll lie to you. I can give you 100 reasons why a parent can tell the child not to lie, and the same thing not to steal, and the same thing respect your elders, and whatever else. Respect your elders, because when you're old, they'll respect you, and they deserve the respect. They gave birth to you, or they were here before you in this world. They prepared the world for you so that you can enjoy the world. So you owe them the honor. I can give you 100 reasons why you should honor. I can give you 100 reasons why you're not allowed to lie, and you're not allowed to steal and cheat and do all these things. And the more you understand why it's not good, you have a chance that your child, hopefully they'll absorb that, they'll understand it, they'll internalize it, and they'll behave accordingly. They'll be mentioned. That's one way of teaching your child. And obviously we must teach our children at that level, because we are intellectual people. Our minds are what governs our entire existence. So whatever sits well in the mind will sit well in the rest of your existence as well. If you can convince your child. That, till now I was talking about in human relations. The same thing with the relationship between man and God. If you can tell your child why it's so important to observe Shabbos. Shabbos brings such a wonderful feeling in the house. Shabbos keeps you balanced. You don't have to work like a workaholic. You need that time for yourself. You need that time for your family. You need that time for your soul. It just makes sense. It's a logical thing that every 7 days you take one day and you turn off all your machines and all your phones and all your gadgets, and you're now able to connect to yourself and to your surroundings on a deeper level. There's no question about that. And I can give you another 10 reasons why it's good to keep Shabbos. And you can probably, if the more you explain it, the more chances you have that the person you're talking to will observe the Shabbos and do all the other mitzvahs. Correct? This is considered in the vernacular of Kaballah, Hasidus, the knowledgeable relationship with Hashem. The relationship we have with God and Torah and mitzvahs based on our rational understanding of things. Take a person in the street. Ask him, why is Hitler bad? Why is Hitler bad? Or why is Osama bin Laden bad? Or why is Haman bad? Every decent human being will be able to give you a litany of reasons why they're no good. They killed people. They hated people. They brought blood and bloodshed. They destroyed the world. What are you talking about? Everyone knows that they're bad. They can explain it to you 100 reasons why they're bad. Right? Look what they did to the economy of the world. Look what they did to the people of the world. Look what they did to the Jewish people. Look what they did to Europe. Who gives them the right to take a life? And so on and so forth. Their human rationale understands the difference between good and bad, between good and evil. Your mind understands it. If you have healthy parents who taught you normal, via mensch, you'll understand that these things are terrible. But then there's another level. There's a level of understanding the difference between good and evil that is not based only on the rationale explanations that your parents, your teachers, society has explained to you. What happens if someone, you see, that here's a problem with rationale. You think the Germans were stupid?
No.
They weren't stupid. They also had rationale. And I guarantee you, I have no doubt, that if you went over to a German in 1940 and asked him, what are you guys doing? How could you do this? How could you bomb Poland like this? How could you kill people like this? I guarantee you every one of them had a rational reason for doing it. They could explain it to you rationally. They were able to. Now obviously they had a skewed rationale. That's a terrible, you can play with a person's mind. We know that. You can play with people's minds all day long. You can brainwash people. The mind is a very vulnerable thing. We've seen that. And therefore, we have to have a Torah look. You have to have the Torah's wisdom to be able to make sure that your mind should never be able to be captured by someone else and twist it and ruin it. So you have to have a healthy brain, a healthy rationale. But the rationale is still, even a healthy rationale, even a healthy brain, is dangerous. It's always vulnerable. Today you have him. Today you convinced him. Today he understands it the way you want him to understand it. He has the right ideas. Is that enough? It isn't enough. Because we see how many millions of people you can talk in, you can explain their rationale, the worst things in the world. What's beyond the rationale in a person's consciousness, in a person's reality? Faith, emunah, right? What is emunah, faith? Faith transcends the rationale. What does faith tell you? Faith is there when you don't understand, right? If you can't understand something, that's when I believe. I rely on faith. But it doesn't mean blind faith. A person, what's blind faith? He can talk, but he can stop believing everything anyone tells you. So the faith also has to have some basis. Comes Purim and teaches us a whole new window into the Jewish experience. Purim opens up a layer of our consciousness that's never opened. What is that? Till now I explained to you our relationship with God that's based on the yediyah, on our knowledge, on our rationale, understanding of right, understanding how bad evil is and how good God is and how good Torah is and how good menschlichkeit is, to be a good person and so on and so forth. Your mind knows the difference. Which is very important, because we started today by saying that our serving Hashem has to be throughout your whole existence, not only in your heart and your hands and feet. It has to infiltrate your mind. Your mind has to understand and motivate you to do the right thing, because your mind wants to do the right thing. Your intellect understands the importance of doing the right thing. That's a healthy person. But that's the level of yediyah, of knowledge, where these higher truths have infiltrated and have been, absorbed by our conscious level. Comes Purim and opens up a whole different level, a subconscious. On Purim we're told, how do you know the difference between Mordechai and Haman? How do you know the difference? Why do you know that Haman is bad and Mordechai is good? Who told you this? You're lucky enough you didn't grow up in Germany in 1940, so you know the difference between Hitler and Mordechai and a Rebbe and a tzaddik. You had good teachers. You had good educators. You had good parents. What happens if you didn't have good parents? What happens if your parents failed you? Would you still know the difference between good and evil? How? How would you know? You're saying yes. How would you know?
If you have the blessing of God. Some people that come out of the worst families under the best. Abraham, didn't he come out of a family of idol worshippers?
Yes.
At the time of he was growing up, it was not the most ideal. And look at him. He's God's friend. So he can change.
So how did that happen? How did he... No one explained it to him, so he explained it to himself. Right? He had his own brain, so he didn't have good parents, so he went and utilized his own thinking, he thought, and he used his own seichel, his own intellect, and he came to the recognition of the silliness of idol worship and the greatness of serving Hashem. Is that how it happened? Yeah, you can argue that that's how it happened. He thought about it, and he came to the recognition.
And he put principle into practice.
100%. But how did he do it? You can argue. He sat and thought and contemplated and toiled until he came to the recognition that this is silliness and this is right. On Purim, something else happens. On Purim, something else happens. We don't know that Haman is bad and Mordechai is good just at the level of the intellectual perception. On Purim, the Shulchan Aruch tells us like this. You are to drink. And it means quite literally to drink, by the way. It's not some metaphor. It means to drink. What does drinking do? Does drinking help you think, by the way?
No,
It doesn't. If you're looking to understand and contemplate and to reach at a higher level of understanding, a person that, for example, a scientist that wants to delve into some scientific wisdom, is he going to sit and drink to help him reach a better understanding of astronomy or of whatever? Of course not. It's just going to confuse him. Drinking will confuse him.
Intoxication.
It's not going to help him. It's going to confuse him. So when you want to think about the greatness of Mordechai, to understand the difference between Mordechai and Haman, the last thing you want to do is drink. If you want to appreciate this at the level of, at the intellectual level, the last thing you want to do is say l'chaim. You don't want to drink then. It's going to confuse you. Go into a room full of books, put your hand on your head and you think, and you'll be able to reach like Avraham did. To reach the recognition that God is right and the idols are wrong. Mordechai is right and Haman is bad. What is this drinking? How does drinking help a person recognize this? So you're going to say on the contrary, that the Gemara is telling us that we shouldn't. We should drink till we don't recognize it, that we don't know the difference. Obviously, the Torah would never tell a Jew, I don't want you to know the difference between good and bad. That's the most ridiculous instruction. Obviously, the Torah is not telling that to a Jew. Under no circumstance would the Torah tell a Jew to enter into a reality of consciousness or non-consciousness. We don't even know the difference between good and bad. You'll go around killing people. If you don't know the difference between good and bad, you'll steal, you'll kill, you'll become bad. You won't see the difference. You'll go into your shoplift and you'll lie and you'll cheat because you don't know the difference between. Obviously, the Torah is not telling us to do something like that or to reach such a level. What is the Torah telling us? On the other hand, the Torah is also not telling us, I want you to understand deeply the difference between good and evil, because then it wouldn't tell us to drink. Because when you drink, you don't understand anything. You lose your mind gets confused. So what does the Torah want? Obviously, we're talking about a third level here. The third level we're talking about is your recognition of the difference between good and evil, between Haman and Mordechai, lahavdul, is not one that comes from your understanding. You have to have a place within your existence where the difference between good and evil is ingrained, it's carved in your heart. You don't need a teacher for that. Or maybe you need a teacher when you're a kid to teach you, obviously. Obviously we need teachers to guide our children. But you have to reach a place in your existence, your soul, on the soul level, that Haman and Mordechai, you know the difference between Haman and Mordechai just because you're a mensch, because you're a yid, you're a person, you have a connection to God. You don't need to have your brain tell you this anymore. Of course you need your brain to explain it as well. As we said before, God wants to infiltrate every part of our existence. But at some point we have to have the recognition between good and bad, which should be obvious to us, that Haman is bad and Mordechai is good, not because our brain understands it. is because you are essentially connected to good and essentially disconnected from evil. Here we're talking about a window into your soul, where the soul doesn't need to have a teacher explain it, the difference between good and bad. Your conscious mind needs you to have a teacher to explain that to you. Your soul needs to have a teacher. Does your soul need to be taught that it's good? Does a father and mother need to have a teacher tell them that your child should be loved? Now, every parent, this is very interesting, by the way, every parent, obviously, will also try as hard as they can to explain to themselves why their child is the best child in the world. My child is smart, my child is good, he's talented, I love every part of him, he's great. You know, this will brag. You know, every mother has a brag book. Look, that's my daughter. She got a great A in her, she's passed, she's an A student, and she's so good, and she's gymnastics, and she's got all the qualities. We try to do that, right? And when we fall short, we feel bad. And when our child is giving us trouble, we feel bad about it, obviously. But every child tries to understand the greatness, why she loves her child, even at the intellectual level, and why he loves his child. But any healthy parent is going to recognize, I need these reasons. I need a reason to love my son, to love my daughter. You don't need a reason. You don't need a reason. But on a given day, that level of love is that's not the level of love that's revealed. We don't function at that level every day of the year. We function at a basic level. If you're going to do good, I'm going to show you love. If you do bad, I'm going to show you a little bit tough love, right? As we call it. If you don't do good, we'll punish. On Purim, the Talmud tells us like that. Now listen to these words again. Listen to the words again and pay attention. Chayiv inish l'psume b'Purim. A person is obligated to celebrate and drink on Purim. Ad lo yoda. Until he reaches a level of lo yoda. He reaches a level within his life which is lo yoda, is beyond knowledge. And at that level, he's recognizes beinor haman lebarach marachai. Over there, he recognizes is the deep recognition between good and bad. Not that you shouldn't know the difference between good and bad. Yes, that's what it means. You shouldn't know the difference. In other words, the difference should be so real by you that it's not knowledge. It's not a knowledgeable difference. It's a recognizable difference. It's an essential difference. And how do you reach that? Through a little l'chaim. How? Why so? Understand that we're not talking about over here metaphoric. The Talmud tells us to drink, and the Shulchan Aruch says you must drink. How does drinking help this? How does drinking get you to a place that the Talmud is trying to get you to? What are we trying to go? Where are we trying to get to on Purim? We're trying to open up that deepest level of our soul, at which point knowledge falls away. I don't need the knowledge. I'm in a place that's beyond knowledge. Over there I know that. Over there I recognize. It's not I know. The word I know is wrong. It's lo yoda. I don't need to know. I have the recognition. It's deeply ingrained. Between cursed is Haman and blessed is Mordechai. How did we get there? So if you're trying to reach this recognition at the highest level of understanding, the last thing the Shulchan Aruch will tell you is to drink. Because when you drink, it confuses your mind. The Shulchan Aruch is not telling you to reach a level where you deeply understand it. The Shulchan Aruch is telling you to reach a level where you don't need to understand it. Where it's just deeply ingrained in you. And that's the neshama level. How does mashka do this? How does vodka and hard drinks do this? What does a hard drink do? What does a hard drink do?
Expose you, because you have no control. Some people, you say, if you really want to know what a man is all about, give him something to drink.
Hmm?
When somebody is intoxicated, the real person comes out.
Correct. That's very true. What's the real person?
You reveal your essence.
Oh. Now we're talking. You're starting to get there. What's the essence of a good person? What's the essence of a good person?
Good deeds.
No, it's before deeds. The essence of a person is not the good deeds. The essence of the person is the deep recognition, the innermost recognition of God and good. Neshama, the soul level. What does vodka do, or our drinks? It removes the facade. It removes the facade.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it does.
Right.
So if your facade is, it removes the facade, allowing for the inside to emerge. So if someone is not in touch with his neshama ever, the last thing you want him to do is say is drink. Why? I'll tell you why. What's going to happen is it'll remove his outer facade, and an inner facade will come out. What is not the facade, the inner level will come out. What's his inner level? He's not in touch with it. He doesn't know. He doesn't know. So he starts throwing bottles, and he starts hitting people, and he starts doing stupid things. A person who's in touch with God, a person who learns, a person who davens, a person who's holy in his life. He lives a holy life, a holy lifestyle. You take away his facade, you know what's going to come out? His soul is going to come out in full burst. And what happens when the soul comes out? Only good things happen. You ever see a real chassid drink? It's the nicest thing to watch. It's the nicest thing to watch. It's the highest level of holiness. And it's not something we do every day, obviously. Because again, we're born with intellect. We have to allow God and our service to God be an intellectual, rational one on a regular day. But once in a while we tell you, on Purim, open yourself up to a deeper level of consciousness, of what we call the subconscious, which is what? The highest level of your neshama. What happens when that highest level of neshama comes out? Lo yoda. It's on a level that's beyond knowledge. And over there, it's recognizable to all. Not knowledgeable to all, but recognizable to all. Bein harer haman lebarach marach. Over there, everyone knows that Haman is bad, and but you have that deep recognition. And this is helped. This is brought about through a bissel mashke, through a little bit of vodka, through a little bit of hard drink, and that's why the Shulchan Aruch tells us to do it. It's not a metaphor. Again, it's very important you understand that. But this idea, I want to further elaborate next week. It's 9 o'clock, so we'll have to cut it short. But I want to further elaborate on this next week. What is the level of rational connection to Hashem, and what is the level of the super-rational connection to Hashem? And you will uncover tremendous wisdom in all of this, and the deep importance of the Yom Tov of Purim. I gave it to you. I just gave you a basic understanding of what this halacha means and why Purim has that power. Why Purim and not any other day, that we still have to explain. I just know what Purim is now. It allows us it's a day that's even higher than Purim, than Yom Kippur. The truth is, it says Yom Kippur is like Purim, right? That's what we just said. It's Yom Kippurim. What's the similarity between Yom Kippur and Purim? The similarity between Yom Kippur and Purim is that both these days reach that level. It says on Yom Kippur we daven 5 davenings, right? 5 tefillos. Every day of the year we do 3. Shabbos and Yom Tov we do 4. We add a musaf. On Yom Kippur we have those 4 plus another one, Nehila. We have 5 prayers. Night, morning, musaf, mincha, Nehila. What are these 5? Every one of these 5 correspond to another level of our neshama. And there are 5 levels of the neshama. So Yom Kippur reaches the 5th level, which is the highest level, the essence of the neshama. Just like Purim, what we just said. Purim gets you into the highest level of your neshama. But the difference between Yom Kippur and Purim is as follows. Yom Kippur, how do we reach it? Through abstention. We become wholly spiritual. We stop eating, we don't drink, we don't engage in physical things and so on. We're white, we put on white clothing, we're angelic. We go into a different world. Our whole existence goes upwards, so to say. Becomes soulful. How do we do it on Purim? And this is the advantage of Purim over Yom Kippur. How do we do this on Purim? Through eating and through drinking and through engaging in the physical activity. The opposite of Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur we reach that level through pure engagement. So we have to understand what's the difference. Why on Yom Kippur we reach it through abstaining, and on Yom Purim we reach it through engaging. You would think it's much better to get there by climbing the spiritual ladder and walking away from the physical. That's when you get to your soul, right? The physical is what inhibits us. It keeps us down, right? It doesn't allow us to go up. Here we find that Purim has that power, that the very physical, which usually inhibits us, that's what allows, the physical allows us to reach that deepest level.
So,
what is it about Purim that has that power?
So what does Tanis Esther do?
Tanis Esther is a fast day that was meant to, is basically to commemorate the fast that the Jewish people did when they were in the story of the Megillah, where Esther asked them to fast 3 days and 3 nights. Say thank you that we don't do it exactly as she said we should do it. Because that would mean 3 days and 3 nights. If you're overweight, you can maybe appreciate that idea. But if you're not overweight, 3 days and 3 nights is a very long time not to eat and drink. But they did it then. Men and women, everyone. Could you imagine 3 days not eating? That's not that they ate by night and they fasted by day. Yom V'Layla, if you look in the 5th chapter of the Megillah, it says 3 days, night and day, it's consecutive. And she did the same. But that's a separate thing. Which is a good point, by the way. Which is also part of this. But what is it? Why Yom Kippur has that? And why the Purim has the power of Yom Kippur, but through a completely different method? The drinking, celebrating, dancing, eating, good food, chicken, meat, fish, you can name it, we have it. You would think the opposite. So we have to understand what does it mean to have a rational relationship with Hashem. And why that's limited, why that's not good enough. Not good enough. That's not good. It's very good. But why is it not good enough? So next week I want to elaborate on the issue of what is the deficiency of intellect. And what is the greatness of going beyond the intellect. This is a very important nekuda, very important topic. And it'll play into the whole Yom Tov of Purim, give you a whole new understanding, what Purim really is. And then we'll talk about other things as well. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful week.